Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you've been following the progress so far on the air suspension repair, you'll know I've done some work on the centre section and the rear section of the air suspension system, and the only thing left to check now really is the front part of the system, particularly the valve block, which I thought previously I could get access to through the wheel arch, but something's in the way, so I think I'm going to have to take off the front bumper to get better access to that, so that's where I'm going to start. So I'm going to take this front grille off again, which is a bit of a pain. There's just 4 tabs along the top. You press those down and give it a good pull. So at the back of the headlight there are 2 tabs. There's one here and one here, and you just lift those up and it should just pull away and you can disconnect the electronics from the back. So right. And just around the back there's just one connector, which comes off easy enough. So running along the top of the bumper there's now 6 8mm screws which need taken out. So underneath the front bumper there's 4 T30 torque screws which need taking out. So I think there's only a couple of screws left. There's a Phillips screw up at the top here and one just underneath that needs to come out, and that disconnects the front bumper from the wheel arch liner, which I've already removed on the other side, so there should just be these 2 left. That should be everything disconnected now. So the front bumper connects to the front wing by like almost a push fit type arrangement. So once you pull this side out and the other side out, it should be free to be pulled away, except there is a washer reservoir, windscreen washer reservoir on this side which feeds the front bumper to wash the headlights. That needs disconnecting, but I can't really get to it until I start to remove the front bumper, so I'm going to pop these off. Try and keep your fingers out. There's a couple of connectors here on the left hand side. I'm not sure what that's to. It's not connected at this end. Problem for another day. But these 2 connectors here, they seem to be snagging, so they need to come off. So I just need to pull this away enough so I can get at the washer fluid hose, which I can see. So you can see the washer fluid hose come down here and then straight to the back of the bottle. So it just unclips from the back of there. Should be the last thing to do. There we go. One bumper removed. So with the front bumper gone, I can see now I would never have got past all of this through the wheel arch, so the bumper did have to come off. I can see the valve block, it's right here, and there are 3 lines that go into it. There's obviously the feed from the centre valve block, or the air compressor that comes into it, and then 2 lines come out, one to the left hand side, one to the right hand side. Now 2 come into the side of the valve block and 1 comes in underneath, and the valve block itself should just pop off. It's on rubber lugs, just like the other ones. But before I do that, the bottom one's quite exposed, so I'm going to undo that one first, then pop it off, and then lift it up and undo the rest. So there's just enough slack in these lines to get to the 2 connectors. This is probably the easiest one, apart from removing the front of the car, to get these lines off. Okay, so I've already taken this all apart, cleaned it out inside. I can't see any visible damage. The O-rings look okay. I've also come up with this 12 volt supply to test the solenoids inside, and they all seem to function okay. You can hear them clicking away. That's number 1, number 2, and 3, so that seems to work. Right then, so I've had the front valve block off, I've taken it apart, I've cleaned it all up, it looks good. I fitted it back to the car, but before I did, I pressurised the lines to the left and the right front airbags, and they seem fine, there's no leaks, so the front seems fine. So what I think I'm going to do now is I'm going to see how much pressure the air compressor builds. Now I can see that from the OBD2, but I don't really trust the sensor or anything, so I'm going to connect a gauge directly to the air compressor, start the car, it's very sketchy, and then see how much pressure builds up, and hopefully nothing explodes. So I'm going to test it. Right, so to check the pressure that's coming out of the air compressor to make sure it's enough, I've taken the line from the air compressor straight into a pressure gauge. There's no relief valve built into this, so if it does hold pressure, I've got a problem. But this gauge, it's only a cheap one, and it tops out at 14 bar. Now the gallery pressure should be 16 bar. So it's a bit risky, but I'm going to start the car and we'll see what pressure this gets up to. So it got up to about 4 bar, it looks like 4 bar, that's 3 bar, 2.5 bar, so it's going down. And once again I can hear air coming out the back. So I think it's going out the inlet again. Right, so we've got some new parts. Here's the old compressor that I've taken off the Range Rover. I say old, it's actually a new one off eBay, but I've managed to find a brand new air compressor in exchange for money. Now this is from Rimmer Brothers, so it's an aftermarket one, it's not a genuine one, but it is from Rimmer Brothers as opposed to something like eBay. It's about 3 times the price of this one as well, so hopefully this solves our problems. So here's the eBay one. Some things I noticed straight off the bat. So the line that goes from, okay, yeah, so the more you look at it, the more differences you notice. So the line that goes from where the desiccant material is here, back to what looks like the exhaust valve, is much thicker on the aftermarket one from Rimmer Brothers. Also, the fittings here are proper Voss connectors, which is great, rather than these push fit ones. They should be a bit more durable. I mean, design wise, oh brilliant, comes with a relay as well. This one didn't. Now I don't think there's a problem with the relay on the Range Rover because it fires the air compressor up no problem, but I'm going to replace that just in case. General fit and finish, the casting, it all seems to look and feel like much better quality. So we'll get this on the car, let's see what happens. Right, so I've got the air compressor fitted, and I've also got the garage air compressor putting about 8 bar of pressure, which is about half what it needs, into the system, into the lines, and I can hear no leaks, so that's fine. So all I need to do now is put the new Voss connector on the end of this line, put that into the air compressor, connect the wiring, change the relay, and then we should be good to start. So here's all the fuses under the bonnet. So underneath here we've got R7. The image gives it away really, but that's the one I need to replace. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with this, but why wouldn't we? Oh. So even though the system didn't have any leaks, I did want to check the operation of the centre valve block. So I got a 12 volt supply from some old sort of power tool batteries, connected to the garage air compressor, added some pressure to it, and then activated it, and could clearly hear the valve operating inside, and so that works well. Right, that's everything in, car's lowered down. Keep an eye on this gap, hopefully it works. So there's nothing going up yet. Over time you can hear the air compressor, which is still going, which is a good sign. You can hear the tone of the air compressor dropping, which means it's building pressure, it's having to work. And that's a good sign. It means there shouldn't be many leaks. I mean, I've tested this, so there aren't any leaks. It's still going, it's a good sign. Now at some point it'll sense there's enough pressure and then open the front and rear valve blocks and send air to each of the corners, which should raise the car. Can't stay in the garage too long as well because this thing stinks. The amount of fumes it's putting out is horrendous. Right, so the compressor's stopped. The car has not risen. Alright, so it's now a couple of days later and I've been online, I've been looking up on the forums what could be going on, because I'm convinced that the plumbing on the air suspension, the airbags, the lines, the compressor, the valves, I'm convinced all that works and all that's fine. So it must be electrical. I think the car, even though there's pressure there, the air compressor works and all that, I think the brains of the car are just so confused because of all the areas that's going on that it's not telling the valves to open and lift the car. So I think it's electrical now, that my problem's electrical. So now there's loads of warnings on the dash for various different reasons. So I've put the front of the car back on because the fog lights and the headlights were disconnected and it was flashing up an error around that. So to rule that out, I've put them back on the car. But as I've come to the car today, something weird's happened back here. This has gone up. I'm convinced this has gone up. I can get my hand in and everything. Now the front's really low, I can't get my fingers in there. And at the back on the other side, it's also really low. So I think it's only just this corner, but it's gone up. Now, the car it's not locked. And when you lock it, it can settle itself. So if there's a leak in an airbag on one side, it can kind of settle itself overnight and balance on the rest of it. But that's only going down. It won't pump itself up. So I don't know what's happened there. Anyway, also I've read about another part that can be a massive cause of faults, all sorts of different faults unrelated to it. And that's the brake light switch. Some of you have probably guessed at this being a problem. So I've been and bought one of those. Right, so because there's so many ECUs on the Range Rover, and it's the same for the Discovery 3 and probably loads of other cars, they don't just report faults within their own kind of subsystem. If there is a fault on another subsystem, it can manifest as a problem, nothing to do with that subsystem, but flag up an issue around some other subsystem elsewhere. And apparently one of the main causes of problems, all sorts of problems on the car, including air suspension problems, believe it or not, is the brake light switch, which sits sort of behind above the brake pedal. If that goes faulty, then it can cause all sorts of problems, apparently. So this is an aftermarket one, but it's from Rover Brothers. This isn't a sponsored video or anything, but I just wanted something that I knew would work. So I need to install this, and apparently it's a doddle. So I'm going to install that now, and then hopefully that'll rule some things out as well, because the car also said that it's got a parking brake fault. Now the electronic parking brake works fine, I can hear it, it works, there's no problems there, so it could be this. Could this be the cause of all my woes? And this was £8. I'll be pleased but annoyed if it is. Right, so apparently you just pull this down a bit, and then when it gets halfway, you pull it out. So far so good. I can see it, that blue and brown thing, that is the brake pedal sensor, and I need to disconnect that. Right, so that's that off. Old one, new one. This actually looks like a very made in Italy. It looks like an aftermarket part, I don't know. So I just need to push that in and turn it anti-clockwise a quarter turn. I don't know what this is. Is that plastic? It's the sharpest plastic known to man. Turns out it's much easier with your left hand. So that's back in there, that's locked into place. Put this cover back on and give it a start. Now that's not good, I can't hear the air compressor at all. Okay, I'm going to try and clear some faults. Probably should have done that first. Right, I've cleared all the fault codes, faults on 23 modules. Fingers crossed. Come on! So just to be doubly sure, I've disconnected the battery and I've connected the leads, the negative and positive leads, together with a jumper cable in the hope that it properly clears any kind of fault codes, because there's still lots of fault codes that I can't clear. For some reason the air compressor isn't coming on at all now. I will check the fuse for it actually, just to make sure it's not that. I don't know. That's a good start, the air compressor's running this time. Oh, come on. So after that last clip, I shut the garage door, gave up for a little bit. A few days passed, and then when I came back to the garage, I noticed that the rear of the car had lifted up all on its own. I then needed to get to the back of the garage to get to some stuff, so I drove the car out, and then as I pulled up, within seconds the front of the car lifted up. So the car is now raised, but there is some problems. I still can't control the ride height from inside. The sensors, the ride height sensors, indicate it's around about where it should be, each corner. It doesn't say it's too high or too low. It says it's in standard height. Now the height here seems to be okay. That seems to be, I mean, I've got no experience of this, but I can get my hand in just, so that appears to be normal ride height. But at the back, that's quite a lot higher. I mean, not only can I get my fist in, but I can get my fist and probably another fist as well. So that to me looks like off-road height. And when you look down the lines of the car, you can visibly see that the back of the car is raised above the front. So, I mean, there could be an issue with the rear valve block. I have got the battery disconnected at the minute, so it's not doing the self-leveling thing overnight. If there's an issue with the rear valve block and it's kind of leaking air from the reservoir, the air reservoir into the back, that could explain why the back is raised. It's the same both sides. But anyway, the plumbing is pretty much there. Maybe there's an issue with the rear valve block, but the plumbing is pretty much there on the air suspension. I'm quite happy with that now, or at least happy enough to leave it, because I think the reason it's not responding inside to ride heights and things like that is because there's other electrical things affecting it. So I'm going to carry on, move on, start working on other things on the car, and hopefully one of those things fixes the air suspension properly. Yeah, so upcoming videos. So I've already started work on the EGR valves. So there's a fault, well, there's two fault codes stored on the car, and it's one for each EGR valve, one on the left, one on the right bank. So I've taken off some pipe work already, and it's looking pretty clogged up, so I've started that, and we've also got a bit of a review coming up as well. So see you in the next one.